Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Hello, my name is Muhammad Akbar Fahriansah and my student number is A320240042 and I'm from class B. Okay, this is task 2 sample 1 standardized speaking. Let's get started. First question. Personally, I strongly believe that schools should absolutely mandate students to participate in physical tests like resistance training and jogging. I definitely think that these tests are crucial for monitoring student health. For instance, I remember when a classmate of mine discovered an unknown heart condition during a mandatory jogging test, which allowed him to get the medical attention but nearly early on. Moreover, beyond health tech, these mandatory activities instill important life habits. For example, students who are required to train regularly learn discipline and the value of preference or perseverance, which are quality that benefit them not just in sports but also in their academic and future personal lives. Yeah, so in conclusion, that's why I'm a firm support of making physical tests a compulsory part of the school curriculum. Next question. Okay. The reading passage announced a change on campus. In particular, it introduced a new policy that limits guest visits up to a maximum of 3 consecutive nights. The university reason is that longer visits can disrupt other students and negatively impact their academic performance. So for the man in the conversation completely opposes this idea. He started off saying that this rule is unfair to students who live in single rooms or single dorms. He argues that if a student lives alone, a long-term guest doesn't cause any inconvenience to others, so the policy shouldn't apply to them. He also mentioned a personal experience with his own roommate. He goes on to say that his roommate brother used to visit frequently, but it was never a problem because his roommate was always considered and asked him for a permission first. In fact, he became good of friends with his brother, which shows that the frequency of visits is a real issue. The key is good communication and courtesy between roommates. So that's why the man believes the new policy is unnecessary and the university should not implement the strict rule. Next question. According to the reading, the hill shopping is a disincentive mate location behavior in insect where males gather at the top of hills to compete for territory, signaling their genetic fitness to females and increasing their mating chance. In the lecture, the professor delves deeper into the subject by providing an illustration of this concept. The professor explained that this behavior is observed in the Agahana Marahu butterfly. To start, the lecturer explains that these butterflies have a strong location-specific matching preference, and to study them, One must climb mountains above 2,500 meters. He goes on to say that the Agahana Marahu butterflies mostly only mate at these high altitudes. This directly demonstrates the hill-topping behaviors where the male likely ascend to these summit areas to establish territories and wait for females to arrive just as the reading passage described. So to sum up, the professor uses the specific example for the Agahana Marahu butterfly to clearly illustrate the concept of hill-topping explained in the reading. Next question. The lecture is about two main types of connection that business build with customer, social and economic relationship. The professor explained that establishing this solid connection is crucial for generating growth and sales. First, the professor talks about building strong social relationship. He mentioned that this involves using real human staff to interact with customer. The reason is the customer feel more comfortable and valued when greeted by actual people. For example, he described a woman who was hesitant to buy a product. She asked a staff member for clarification and talked that personal exchange. She got the information she needed and established a closer relationship with the company, making her more likely to be loyal. He goes on to say that the second method is building economic connection, while the transcript cuts of this typically refers to strategies like offering loyalty discount, special member price, or reward points. These economic benefits give customer a tangible financial incentive to keep buying from the same company, thereby strengthening the business relationship. So to sum up, the professor illustrates that business use both personal, social interaction, and practical economic incentive to build strong, loyal relationship with their customers. That's for a sample one. Next to sample two. Okay, next to sample two. First question. Personally speaking, I feel that I'm much more productive and creative when I work in relaxed environment. I definitely think that low stress atmosphere allows for deeper focus. For instance, I remember when I was working on a complex project with my friends, the pressure was so intense. What sorry was so intense that I made a crucial error in my calculation, which cost us extra time to fix. Moreover, a relaxed setting fosters better collaboration and idea sharing among team members. For example, in my previous role, our team's most innovative solution always came during our casual, low pressure brainstorming sessions where everyone felt comfortable proposing unconventional ideas without fear of judgment. So thumbs up. While pressure is sometimes unavoidable, I strongly prefer a calm work environment because it leads to higher quality work and more sustainable creativity. Next question. The reading passage announced a plan from the Recreational Service Department. They will use special funding to buy more exercise machine for the campus gym. This is in response to student complaints about there not being enough machine, and they believe it will promote healthier lifestyle among students. The woman in the conversation strongly opposed this plan. She presents two main reasons for her disagreement. First, she argues that the problem of overcrowding is more like too much people. She states that even though the gym is busy, she never has to wait to use exercise bikes or weight machines. She then checks with the man, who confirms he doesn't have to wait either, suggesting the current number of machines might be sufficient. Secondly, she believes the money could be better spent elsewhere. She points out that the campus already offers a wide variety of other exercise options, such as a great swimming pool, running paths, and sports teams. Her point is that since people have different preferences for how they exercise, simply adding more gym machines won't make significant difference or encourage more students to be active. Therefore, so concludes that purchasing a bunch of new machines is an ineffective use of the special funding. Next question. According to the reading, the law of diminishing returns is an economic principle that states when you keep adding more of one resource at to fixed amount of another, the extra output you gain from each new addition will eventually start to decrease. In the lecture, the professor delves deeper into the subject by providing an illustration of this concept. The professor used the example of a small coffee shop with a fixed number of espresso machines. To start, the lecturer explains that initially, when the owner hires more barista, the number of coffees produced increase significantly because the machines are used more constantly and efficiently. He goes on to say that after a certain point, adding if even more baristas leads to the law of diminishing returns. For instance, with too many staff for the available machines, the baristas start to get each other way have to wait to use a machine and overall productively slow down. The increase in output for each new worker becomes much smaller. So that's why the coffee shop example clearly demonstrates the principle, showing that adding more variable inputs like labor to a fixed input like equipment will eventually smaller benefits. Last question for sample 2. The lecture is about two fundamental programming style, pro, procedural programming and object-oriented programming. The professor explained the key difference is in how they organize code and data. First, the professor talks about procedural programming. He described it as a style built around a series of steps or procedures. For example, he mentioned procedures like one for reading a file and another for calculating a square root. These are separate actions that operate on data, and any procedure can be called at any time. He goes on to say that object-oriented programming is completely different because it's organized code around object and object are bundled together, both data like attribute and the function is like a behavior, so that operate on that data. The professor provides an example of an object representing a person, which would contain data like a name, an address, and along with function that can use the data. The key difference is that in procedural programming, data and function are functions are separate, but in object-oriented programming, they are combined into a single unit, the object. So the conclusion, the professor contrasted these two by highlighting that procedural programming focuses on the step and action, while object-oriented programming focuses on the object that contain both data and action together. Well, that's all for for the task 2, sample 1 and sample 2. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.